As with everything else, Spring Boot makes logging very easy. In fact, with intelligent defaults, it is ready to log out of the box with zero configuration. At the same time, if you want, Spring allows you to fine-tune logging to your preferences or use a logging framework of your choice. In this video, we'll start off by seeing the default logging out of the box in Spring Boot. Next, we will see how to fine-tune the logging levels to our need. So if you want, we can set different levels of logging for different packages. Next, we will see how to log to a file, how to specify the logging levels as command line parameters. This gives you the ability of running it at, say, the debug level in the dev environment, but at the normal info level for production, without having to hardcode the levels in the application. Finally, we will see a more advanced configuration in terms of specifying our custom configuration in an external configuration file. The mandatory logging dependency in Spring is the Jakarta Commons Logging API. When you create a Spring Boot project, you would have a starter file like the Spring Boot Starter Web. In fact, every starter in Spring Boot will pull in Spring Boot Starter Logging dependency. That further pulls in its dependency Spring-JCL, which is Spring Jakarta Commons Logging API. So, if you are using any starter in Spring Boot, you are already set and you have everything to start logging out of the box. Spring Boot uses Apache Commons logging for all internal logging, but the underlying log implementations are flexible. For your own logging, you can, using SLF4j, which is a logging interface, you can use Java util logging, log4j2, or logback, which are all concrete implementation libraries. If you are using Spring Starter, logback is the default concrete logging library used by Spring Boot. If you want to use a different logging implementation, then simply include its respective library on the class path. It's that easy. Alright, let's see logging in action. Here, I am on the spring.start.io website. Let's choose the build as Maven, give the name as log demo, add the Spring Web dependency, and click Generate. Save the zip file to a folder, unzip it. Now, here I have IntelliJ open, click Open, go to the unzip folder, point at the pom.xml file, open as a project, trust it, and here is our project, and the pom.xml file with our Spring Boot starter web dependency. Expanding the external libraries, we see it bought in the logback libraries. Here is our main Spring Boot application file. Let me run it. And in the console, we see logging, which is Spring's internal logging. Let's add ours now. Right-click on the package, click New, Class, name it Log Demo Controller. Mark it as a REST controller. Create a get mapping for the root URL. Let's write a simple method, public string get hello, which returns hello from Spring Boot. Let me rerun the project. Open a browser, go to localhost 8080, the default port, and we see our output. Alright, so things are geared up properly. Now let's add logging. Let's create a logger instance and choose SLF4j interface, logger, and the logger factory.getLogger, passing in logDemoController.class so that our logger knows which class is logging. Let's add logger.info, info log from app, and logger.trace, trace log from app. For your reference, here are the various logging levels, trace being the most verbose as it will cause all levels to be outputted. Error being the least, it will only output log statements at the error level. At the info level, we would not see the trace and debug level of messages. Let's rerun our project, call our controller endpoint, and we see the info level of log output. So a couple of things here. We do not have to do any configuration or include libraries to enable logging. Spring Boot did all of that for us. Secondly, by default, Spring Boot sets the log level at info. Of course, it allows us to change it. So let me open the application.properties file and put the root log level as logger.level.root equal to trace. Since we are setting it at the root level, it will take effect for everything, including our packages. Let's rerun it. And this time, we see a whole lot of stuff being spit out. Go to the browser and hit the endpoint again, and now we see our trace output also, trace log from app. But we do not want all this other crazy output from Spring internal logging. We can fix it. Go back to the application.properties file, add logger.level.root as info, and logger.level, our package name here, com.example.logdemo, add trace. So only our trace messages will show up and not Spring's internal messages. Rerun the app. The output looks much more cleaner. Hit the endpoint, and we see both our info and trace messages. Cool. So we can specify different log levels for different packages. Let me stop the app, clear the console. How can we log to a file? Add another property, logging.file.name, with the full path to our log file, which is at the logs folder under our root folder with the name app.log. Run the project again. Right-click on the project and choose Reload from Disk. And here we see the folder logs was created, and within it, the file app.log having our output. Hit the endpoint, and we see our log messages here. Let me stop the app and clear the console. Typically, I like to keep the log levels out of the application.properties file, and I like to specify them at runtime. This way, I can run it in dev with a higher level, say trace, and at a lower level info for prod, without having to go in the code and change the settings in the application.properties file. So let me remove the log level lines from here. Just the log file name is okay. Go to Run, Edit Configurations, click plus to add a configuration, and goal as package. Click OK. Now let's run our maven package command. It's done, and it has built the logdemo.jar file in our target folder. Let me go to app.log and delete the lines. Click Terminal to open up a terminal. It opens in the target folder. Running an ls shows our jar file over here. Now let me run java-jar and using -dlogging.level.root equal to info and -dlogging.level.com.example.logdemo as info. So you can specify the levels for our packages while launching the app and then our jar file name. We still see for Spring internal the info level. Go and hit the endpoint. We see our info log only because if you recall, we specified the info level for our package, and at that level we will not see the trace messages. And going to the app.log file, we see our messages logged over here. This would typically cover the most common logging scheme for most apps. However, if we want to have a more complex, customized logging, we can specify it by using a custom log configuration. So putting a file by the name logback.xml or logback-spring.xml, the second being the preferred name for Spring, in the class path, then Spring Boot will pick it up. For other logging frameworks, there are different file names as follows. Alright, let me go to the application.properties file and comment this line, as we are now going to specify it by using a custom log file. Go to the resources folder, and I'll copy a file by the name logback-spring.xml. Let me open this file. Here we have a couple of file appenders. One we are naming app_log_file and specifying the file name as app.log under our logs folder. We can also specify the pattern while printing the log lines. By the way, we can also do it in the application.properties file by using logging.pattern, and you can specify different patterns for console and file outputs. And then we have a console appender with the name app_log_console, and then we specify that for the root level we want the level as info and use the appender with the name as spring_log_file, and for our package the level as trace with appenders as app_log.file and app_log_console. So we want to both write to the console and the app.log file. From the run drop down, let me choose the log demo application run configuration and run our app. This time in the console, we do not see Spring's internal logging, only our package logging. Let me reload the project from disk, and we see here now another file, spring.log, where Spring's internal logging is going at the info level, and the app.log file where our package logging is going at the trace level. Let me hit the endpoint, and here we see our messages both in the file and the console. So you can have the logging as customized as you want. In this video, we started off looking at the Spring's default 0 configuration logging, which is at the info level. Then we customized it to have the root level logging at info and our package level logging at trace. We saw how to specify logging levels at the command line, and finally how to specify more complex logging with a custom log file. Thanks for watching.